Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining today's session. Let us start with Mangalachala. Om Jnanathimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we were reading the 16th text of 18th chapter, Maharaj Parikshith was first. Let me share this. Hare Krishna. So we are reading the 16th text. Hare Krishna, Anita Madhuri, we complete the 16th text.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Translation. O Sutta Goswami, please describe those topics of the Lord by which Maharaja Parikshit, whose intelligence was fixed on liberation, attained the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of Garuda, the king of birds. Those topics were vibrated by the son of Vyasa, Srila Sukadeva. Purport. There is some controversy amongst the students on the path of liberation. Such transcendental students are known as impersonalists and devotees of the Lord. The devotee of the Lord worships the transcendental form of the Lord, whereas the impersonalist meditates upon the glaring effulgence or the bodily rays of the Lord, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Here in this verse, it is said that Maharaja Parikshit attained the lotus feet of the Lord by instructions in knowledge delivered by the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami was also an impersonalist in the beginning, as he himself has admitted in the Bhagavatam 2.1.9. But later on, he was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord and thus became a devotee. Such devotees with perfect knowledge are called Mahabhagavatas or first class devotees. There are three classes of devotees, namely the Prakarta, Madhyama, and Mahabhagavata. The Prakrita or third class devotees are temple worshippers without specific knowledge of the Lord and Lord's devotees. The Madhyama or the second class devotee knows well of the Lord's devotees, the neophytes, and the non devotees also. But the Mahabhagavata or the first class devotee sees everything in relation with the Lord and the Lord present in everyone's relation. The Mahabhagavata therefore does not make any distinction, particularly between a devotee and a non-devotee. Maharaja Parikshit was such a Mahabhagavata devotee because he was initiated by Mahabhagavata devotee Sukadeva Goswami. He was equally kind even to the personality of Kali, and what to speak of others. So, there are many instances in the transcendental histories of the world of an impersonalist who has later become a devotee. But a devotee has never become an impersonalist. This very fact proves that on the transcendental steps, the step occupied by a devotee is higher than the step occupied by an impersonalist. It is also stated in Bhagavad Gita 12.5 that persons stuck on the impersonal step undergo more sufferings than achievement of reality. Therefore, Knowledge imparted by Sukadeva Goswami unto Maharaja Parikshit helped him attain the service of the Lord. At this stage of perfection is called Apavarga, or the perfect stage of liberation. Simple knowledge of liberation is material knowledge. Actual freedom from material bondage is called liberation. But attainment of the transcendental service of the Lord is called the perfect stage of liberation. Such a stage is attained by knowledge and renunciation. As we have already explained, Bhagavatam 1.2.12, and perfect knowledge as delivered by Srila Sukadeva Goswami results in the attainment of transcendental service of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Text 70. Thus, please narrate to us the narrations of the unlimited, for they are purified and supreme, are spoken to Maharaja Parikshit, and they are very dear to the pure devotees of Bhakti Yoga. Perfect. What was spoken to Maharaj Parikshit and what is very dear to the pure devotees is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is mainly full of narrations of activities of the Supreme Unlimited. Therefore, it is a science of Bhakti Yoga or devotional service of the Lord. Thus, it is Para or Supreme because although it is enriched with all knowledge and religion, it is specifically enriched with the devotional service of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Text 18. Hare Krishna Sarshita Mathaja Darshan Prabhu, you can get that.
Hare Krishna. Translation. Sri Suta Goswami said, O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from lower births. Purport. Suta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed caste or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association like Sri Sukadeva Goswami and the great rishis of Naimisharanya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed off. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle in pursuance of the Vedic usages. And by his transcendental association, he elevated many low-born or those disqualified by birth or action to the status of devotional service and established them in the position of acharyas or authorities. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a brahmana or shudra by birth, or a householder or a mendicant in the order of society, if he is conversant with the signs of Krishna, he can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master. Just a second. He's on another call. Should I continue?
Okay, you can continue this paragraph.
Suta Goswami learned the signs of Krishna from great rishis and authorities like Shukadeva and Vyasadeva, and he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisharanya eagerly waited to hear from him the signs of Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he had the double association of great souls by hearing and preaching. Transcendental signs or the signs of Krishna has to be learned from the authorities, and when one preaches the signs, he becomes still and more qualified. So Suta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus undoubtedly he was completely freed from all disqualifications of low birth and mental agonies. This verse definitely proves that Srila Sukadeva Goswami did not refuse to teach Suta Goswami about the transcendental signs, nor did the sages of Naimisharanya refuse to hear lessons from him because of his inferior birth. This means that thousands of years ago, there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental signs because of inferior birth. The rigidity of the so-called caste system in Hindu society became prominent within only 100 years or so, when the number of Dvijabandhus or disqualified men in families of higher caste increased. Lord Sri Chaitanya revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Thakur Haridas to the position of Namacharya, or the authority in preaching the glories of the holy name of the Lord. Although His Holiness Srila Haridas Thakur was pleased to appear in a family of Mohammedans. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Jagannath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Such is the power of pure devotees of Lord. The Ganges water is accepted as pure and one can become purified after taking the birth in the waters of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul, even by being seen by the low-born and what to speak association. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world, and and it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work. The mental diseases of the present generations are more acute the bodily diseases. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. Maha Mahatmanam
Atmana Abhidan.
Abhinandan also means a dictionary of great devotees or a book full of the word of great devotees. Such a dictionary of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are in the Vedas and allied literatures, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
It's 19. Hare Krishna Puskara. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Translation. And what to speak of those who are under the direction of the great devotees, chanting the holy name of the unlimited, who has unlimited potency, the personality of Godhead, unlimited in potency and transcendental by attributes, is called Ananta, unlimited. Purport. The Dvijabandhu or the less intelligent, uncultured men born of higher caste put forward many arguments against the lower caste men becoming Brahmanas in this life. They argue that birth is in the family of Shudras or less than Shudras is made possible by one's previous sinful acts, and that one therefore has to complete the terms of disadvantages due to lower birth. And to answer these false logicians, Srimad Bhagavatam asserts that one who chants the holy name of the Lord under the direction of a pure devotee can at once get free from the disadvantages due to a lower caste birth. A pure devotee of the Lord does not commit any offense while chanting the holy name of the Lord. There are 10 different offenses in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. To chant the holy name under the direction of a pure devotee is offenseless chanting. Offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord is transcendental, and therefore such chanting can at once purify one from the effects of all kinds of previous sins. This offenseless chanting indicates that one has fully understood the transcendental nature of the holy name and has thus surrendered unto the Lord. Transcendentally, the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical, being absolute. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as non-different from him and are equally powerful also. In the last word of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asserts that one who surrenders fully unto him is protected from all sins by the grace of the Lord. Since his name and he himself are identical, the Lord can undoubtedly deliver one from the disadvantage.
Just skip the line.
Which one?
Identical, the holy name of the Lord can protect. I will highlight.
Please highlight. Identical, the holy name of the Lord can protect the devotee from all effects of sins. The chanting of the holy name of the Lord can undoubtedly deliver one from disadvantages of a lower case birth. The Lord's unlimited power is extended on and on the unlimited expansion of the devotees and incarnations, and thus every devotee of the Lord And incarnations also can be equally surcharged with the potency of the Lord. Since the devotee is surcharged with the potency of the Lord, even fractionally, the disqualifications due to lower birth cannot stand in the way. Hare Krishna.
Next 20. Hare Krishna Sagar Prabhu. You can take.
Hare Krishna. Translation. It is now ascertained that He, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited and there is none equal to Him. Consequently, no one can speak of Him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of goddess of fortune even by prayers. But this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although He is unwilling to have such service. Purport. The personality of Godhead or the Parameswara Parabrahman, according to Shrutis, has nothing to do. He has no equal, nor does anyone excel him. He has unlimited potencies, and every action is carried out systematically in his natural and perfect way. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in himself, and he has nothing to accept from anyone else, including the great demigods like Brahma. Others ask for the favor of goddess of fortune, and despite such prayers, she declines to award such favors. But still, she renders service unto Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he has nothing to accept from her. The Personality of Godhead, in his Garbhodayaka Vishnu feature, begets Brahma, the first created person in the material world. From his navel lotus stem and not in the womb of the goddess of fortune, who is eternally engaged in his service. There are some of the instances of the complete full of complete
Independence.
independence and perfection. This that he has nothing to do does not mean that he is imperfect, impersonal. He is transcendentally so full of inconceivable potencies that simply by his willing, everything is done without physical or personal endeavor. He is called, therefore, Yogeshwara or the Lord of mystic powers.
Next 20. Hare Krishna Amita.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation. Who can be worthy of the name of Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to the Lord Shiva as a worshipful welcome. This very water, the Ganges, is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva. Purport. The conception of many gods in the Vedic literatures by the ignorant is completely wrong. The Lord is one without a second, but he expands himself in many ways, and this is confirmed in the Vedas. Such expansions of the Lord are limitless, but some of them are the living entities. The living entities are not as powerful as the Lord's plenary expansions, and therefore there are two different types of expansions. Lord Brahma is generally one of the living entities, and Lord Shiva is via medium between the Lord and the living entities. In other words, even demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, who are the chief amongst all demigods, are never equal to or greater than Lord Vishnu, the supreme personality of Godhead. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and all powerful demigods like Brahma and Shiva are engaged in the worship of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Therefore, who can be more powerful than Mukunda, Lord Krishna, to be factually called the Supreme Personality of Godhead? The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi ji, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva are not independently powerful. They are powerful as expansions of the Supreme Lord and all of them are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and so also are the living entities. There are 4 sects of worshipful devotees of the Lord, and chief amongst them are the Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and Sri Sampradaya, descending directly from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, respectively. Besides the above mentioned 3 Sampradayas, there is the Kumara Sampradaya, descending from Sanat Kumara. All the 4 original Sampradayas are still scrupulously engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord up to date, and they all declare that Lord Krishna, Mukunda, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and no other personality is equal to him or greater than him. Hare Krishna.
Text 22. Translation. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord Krishna can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachments, including the gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. Purpose. Only the self-control can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-controlled means not indulging in sense enjoyment more than is necessary, and those who are not self-controlled are given over to sense enjoyment. Right philosophical speculation is a subtle sense enjoyment of the mind. Sense enjoyment leads one to the path of darkness. Those who are self-controlled can make progress on the path of liberation from the conditional life of material existence. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should not go on the path of darkness, but should make a progressive path towards the path of light and liberation. Self-control is actually achieved not by artificially stopping the senses from material enjoyment, but by becoming factually attached to the Supreme Lord, by engaging one's unalloyed senses in the transcendental service of the Lord. The senses cannot be forcibly curbed, but they can be given proper engagement. Purified senses, therefore, are always engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This perfectional stage of sense enjoyment is called Bhakti Yoga. So, those who are attached to the means of Bhakti Yoga are factually self controlled and can all of a sudden give up their family or bodily attachment for the service of the Lord. This is called Paramhamsa stage. Hamsas or swan accept only milk out of a mixture of milk and water. Similarly, those who accept the service of the Lord instead of Maya's service are called Paramahamsas. They are actually naturally qualified with all the good attributes such as pridelessness, freedom from vanity, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, respectability, worship, devotion, and sincerity. All these godly qualities in the devotee of the Lord, this is the devotee of the Lord spontaneous. Such Paramhamsas who are completely given up to the service of the Lord are very rare. They are very rare even amongst the rare liberated souls. Real non-violence means freedom from envy. In this world, everyone is envious of his fellow being, but a perfect Paramahamsa, being completely given up to the service of the Lord, is perfectly non-envious. He loves every living being in relation with the Supreme Lord. Real renunciation means perfect dependence on God. Every living being is dependent on someone else because he is so made. Actually, everyone is dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But when one forgets his relation with the Lord, he becomes dependent on the conditions of the material nature. Renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the conditions of the material nature and thus becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the conditions of the matter. This Paramahamsa stage is the highest perfection stage in the yoga, the process of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna. Text 23. Hare Krishna Saraswati Mataji. Hare Krishna Saraswati
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Yes.
Just a second.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Translation. O Rishis, who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge is concerned. As the birds fly in the sky as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realization allows. Purport. The supreme absolute truth is unlimited. No living being can know about the unlimited by his limited capacity. The Lord is impersonal, personal, and localized. By his impersonal feature, he is all-pervading Brahman. By his localized feature, he is present in everyone's heart as a supreme soul, and by his ultimate personal feature, he is the object of transcendental loving service by his fortunate associates, um, the pure devotees. The pastimes of the Lord in different features can only be estimated partly by the great learned devotees. So, Srila Sutta Goswami has rightly taken this position in describing the pastimes of the Lord as far as he has realized. Factually, only the Lord himself can describe himself, and his learned devotees also can describe him as far as the Lord gives him the power of description.
24, 25. Hare Krishna Satyamadi.
Hare Krishna. Translation. Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshith, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty while following the stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well known Shamika Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. Purport. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities. One has to give up all attachment for worldly relations before one is able to go back to Godhead. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affairs, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he creates an awkward situation and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Maharaj Parikshit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Sri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was the medium for the Bhagavad Gita. Had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord himself for the good of all concerned. Similarly, had Maharaj Parikshit had not been fatigued, hungry, and thirsty at this time, Srimad Bhagavatam would not have been spoken by Srila Sukadev Goswami, the prime authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is a prelude to the circumstances under which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for the benefit of all concerned. The prelude therefore begins with the words once upon a time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Pushkala. Continue.
Hare Krishna. Text 27. Could you please scroll up?
26.
26. Sorry. The translation. The Muni's sense organs, breath, mind, and intelligence were all restrained from material activities, and he was situated in a trance apart from the tree, wakefulness, dream, and unconsciousness, having achieved a transcendental position correlatively equal with the Supreme Absolute. Purport. It appears that the Muni in whose hermitage the king entered was in yogic trance. The transcendental position is attained by three processes, namely the process of jnana or theoretical knowledge of transcendence, the process of yoga or factual realization of trance by manipulation of the physiological and psychological functions of the body, and the most approved process of bhakti yoga, or the engagement of senses in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also we have the information of the gradual development of perceptions from matter to a living entity. Our material mind and body develop from the living entity, the soul, and being influenced by the three qualities of matter, we forget our real identity. The Jnana process theoretically speculates about the reality of the soul. But Bhakti Yoga factually engages the spirit soul in activities. The perception of matter is transcended to still subtler states of the senses. The senses are transcended to a subtler mind and then to breathing activities and gradually to intelligence. Beyond the intelligence, the living soul is realized by the mechanical activities of the yoga system or practice of meditation, restraining the senses, regulating the breathing system, and applying intelligence to rise to the transcendental position. This trance stops all material activities of the body. The king saw the Muni in that position. He also saw the Muni as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. 27. Hare Krishna Jagannath Prabhu, 27. Hare Krishna Jagannath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation. The sage in meditation was converted by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king whose palate was dry from thirst asked him for water. Purpose. The king, being thirsty, asked the sage for water. That such a great devotee and the king asked for water from a sage absorbed in trance was certainly providential. Otherwise there was no chance of such a unique happening. Maharaja Parikshith was thus placed in an awkward position so that gradually Srimad Bhagavatam could be revealed. Hare Krishna.
So we'll stop it here. We'll continue in the next class on Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Same time. So, taking leave of today. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhyo patitana bhavnebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnavvrinda ki jai. Transcendental book Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Thank you all. So we'll meet on Tuesday.